Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of Project MKULTRA, the CIA's mind control program that actually happened. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. Between 1953 and 1973, the CIA secretly dosed American and Canadian citizens with LSD, subjected them to sleep deprivation, sensory isolation, and psychological torture without their knowledge or consent. The program was called MKULTRA. CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all documents destroyed in 1973. When Congress investigated in 1977, they found it had all happened in 150 separate research projects involving 80 institutions. MKULTRA is not a conspiracy theory. It is a documented government program confirmed by Senate hearings, surviving documents, and legal settlements paid to victims. The question is not whether it happened. The question is what it achieved, what was destroyed, and what, if anything, was carried forward. The program's records were meant to be gone. 20,000 documents survived by accident, misfiled in a records facility Helms' team forgot to search. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Governments keep secrets. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is documented fact, confirmed by declassified archives, freedom of information disclosures, and the confessions of officials long after the events in question. The United States government ran secret programs to test psychedelic drugs on unwitting civilians, MKULTRA, to spy on its own citizens, COINTELPRO, and to cover up nuclear testing incidents that killed American soldiers. The British government suppressed information about UFO encounters by military personnel for decades. The Soviet Union systematically falsified scientific data to maintain ideological conformity. None of this means that every government secret involves supernatural phenomena or alien contact. The reality of classified programs is almost always more mundane. Military technology being tested covertly, intelligence operations that cannot be publicly acknowledged, or simply the bureaucratic instinct to classify first and justify later. Most UFO sightings that turn out to have official explanations were classified aircraft. Most government denials of anomalous phenomena are straightforwardly honest. The phenomena being denied are simply not real. But the documented history of government secrecy has a practical effect on investigative credibility. When officials deny knowledge of events that witnesses describe in compelling detail, that denial cannot be taken at face value without independent corroboration. The proven track record of institutional concealment means that institutional denial, however authoritative it sounds, is not the same as evidence of absence. This complicates every modern mystery that touches on official narrative. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding Project MKULTRA, the CIA's mind control program that actually happened, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. MKULTRA was approved by CIA Director Allen Dulles in April 1953 and ran until 1973. Its stated goal was to develop techniques for controlling human behavior, extracting information from resistant subjects, and potentially programming individuals to act against their own will or knowledge. The program was a direct response to perceived Soviet and Chinese advances in psychological manipulation of prisoners of war. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly, it is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the program encompassed 150 sub-projects conducted at 80 institutions, including 44 universities and colleges, 15 research foundations, 12 hospitals, and 3 prisons. Subjects were given LSD, mescaline, heroin, and other substances without consent. They were subjected to electroconvulsive therapy, hypnosis, sleep deprivation lasting days, and sensory isolation in specially constructed rooms. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine Frank Olson, an army biochemist working on MKULTRA research, was secretly dosed with LSD by CIA officer Sidney Gottlieb at a retreat in November 1953. 9 days later, Olson fell from a 10th-floor window of the Statler Hotel in New York. His death was ruled a suicide. In 1994, his family had his body exhumed. Forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht found evidence of a blunt force head wound inconsistent with the fall, suggesting he was rendered unconscious before going through the window. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, Dr. Ewan Cameron, head of psychiatry at McGill University and former president of the World Psychiatric Association, conducted some of MKULTRA's most extreme experiments at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, funded through a CIA front. Cameron subjected patients, admitted for depression and anxiety, not experimentation, to weeks of drug-induced sleep, repeated electroconvulsive therapy at up to 40 times standard intensity, and psychic driving, recorded messages played on loop through speakers under their pillows for months. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of all MKULTRA files in January 1973, anticipating congressional investigation. The destruction was carried out. However, approximately 20,000 documents had been misfiled in a CIA records facility in Rockville, Maryland, and were not located by those conducting the destruction. They were discovered in 1977 during a routine FOIA search and formed the basis of the Church Committee's findings. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The Church Committee Senate hearings of 1975-1976 and the subsequent 1977 Senate hearings, specifically on MKULTRA, confirmed the program's existence and scope. John Marks used the surviving documents to write The Search for the Manchurian Candidate, 1979, which remains the most comprehensive public account. The CIA officially acknowledged the program. No individual was ever prosecuted. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain Project MKULTRA, the CIA's mind control program that actually happened. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that MKULTRA succeeded in developing reliable mind control techniques, and those techniques were classified and preserved despite the destruction of program records, the unverifiable worst-case theory. No surviving evidence supports the claim that the program achieved its stated goals. The consensus among researchers who have reviewed the documents is that MKULTRA failed. LSD produced unpredictable rather than controllable responses, and no reliable behavior modification technique was developed. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that CIA officials ordered Frank Olson's murder because he had become a security liability after expressing reservations about MKULTRA operations, particularly the covert use of biological and chemical agents. Cyril Wecht's forensic finding of pre-fall head trauma supports this reading. The CIA paid the Olson family $750,000 in 1976 without admission of liability, which Olson's family regards as evidence of culpability rather than generosity. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that MKULTRA researchers later provided the intellectual foundation for the CIA's post-2001 enhanced interrogation program. This is partially documented. James Mitchell and Bruce Jesson, the psychologists who designed the post-2001 program, drew on SEER, survival, evasion, resistance, escape training, which was itself partly informed by Cold War research, including work connected to MKULTRA findings on stress and cognitive degradation. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding Project MKULTRA, the CIA's mind control program that actually happened, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the 20,000 surviving MKULTRA documents released under FOIA and held at the National Archives, detail 150 sub-projects by name and describe experimental protocols, funding flows, and results. They confirm non-consensual experimentation on civilians, hospital patients, prisoners, and mental health patients. They are the primary public record of what the program did. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented Cyril Wecht's 1994 forensic examination of Frank Olson's exhumed remains identified a hematoma on the skull consistent with a blunt force impact before the fall from the hotel window, a finding inconsistent with a straightforward jump or fall. The Manhattan DA opened a homicide investigation in 1994 but closed it without charges, citing insufficient evidence to prosecute after 40 years. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed Cameron's Canadian patients sued the Canadian government and CIA in 1988. The Canadian government settled in 1992, paying approximately $100,000 each to surviving patients or their families. The settlement acknowledged that patients had been harmed by experiments conducted without informed consent. The CIA settled separately with some patients in 1988. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding Project MKULTRA, the CIA's mind control program that actually happened. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. MKULTRA is fully documented in declassified records and confirmed by Senate testimony. The CIA acknowledged the program. Frank Olson's family received $750,000 in 1976. Cameron's Canadian victims received government settlements. No individual was prosecuted. No confirmed evidence exists that the program achieved its goal of reliable mind control. It remains the most thoroughly documented case of a democratic government conducting non-consensual human experimentation on its own citizens. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of Project MKULTRA, the CIA's mind control program that actually happened from the historical record. Through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of MKULTRA ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.